time that you spend outside of your attachments, the more time you spend observing. It's about reps. You can do it for minutes. You can do it for hours. You can do it for days. Tattvam asi. The more you do it, the more potent it will be. Realistically speaking, I would say that diligent practice for 2 to 5 years will probably yield some kind of result. But if y'all want to really understand, like, how long do I do this? And the answer, how much do I do this? The answer is as much as you can for somewhere between 2 to 5 years. Questions? So, okay, so let's go to, let me see if I can get this working. Okay. So people are asking, Tattvamasi, how do I practice it? So there are 2 or 3 different ways to practice it, okay? One is at the end of your meditation. So whatever meditative practice you do, so some preparatory exercises, like you can do some Om chanting or whatever. At the end of your meditation, there will be a stillness in the mind. So when there is a stillness in the mind, you can repeat to yourself Tattvamasi. Tattvamasi. I am that. Better to use the Sanskrit. You can also say it out loud if you want to. Another way to do Tattvamasi is with a mala. So you can repeat it out loud 108 times every single day. Okay? Third way to practice Tattvamasi is to notice it in the world. So as you go through your life, events will happen, and those events will destabilize you. You will get angry at particular things. You will get frustrated at particular things. Take a deep breath and repeat to yourself, Tattvamasi, I am that. This is part of me. This is my choice. This is my creation. You own it. And you may say, but Dr. K, I don't control anything. That's exactly the point. You'd be amazed, right? So you accept responsibility for the circumstances around you, and you do whatever is in your power to address them. And so when you start accepting this kind of responsibility, it's going to be very difficult. It doesn't mean that you can't control the outside world, but you accept responsibility for it. You do absolutely what you can. And then as you do absolutely what you can, your attitude will change. Change completely by accepting responsibility, not by shirking it. Because if you pay attention, what happens is a lot of our suffering comes from the shirking of our responsibilities, not living up to them fully. And this is what's so confusing. See, you can get disappointed because you studied the hardest that you could and you still got a B. And we think that this leads to suffering, and it does. Why does it lead to suffering? Because you were expecting an A. It's not the effort, it's the expectation. On the flip side, when you do everything that you can, you feel good about yourself. When you've worked a hard day and you go to bed at night and you're like, man, I had such a productive day. It's not about the accomplishment, it's about the productivity. You could discover tomorrow that you did something wrong and it needs to be redone. There can be some amount of disappointment with that, so be it. So it's confusing, but this is what advanced detachment is. It runs against many of our preconceived notions. So you can do it as part of an Anushtanam. So I'm hoping I can get questions from Slido, from the team. Yeah, so I'm going to need... Okay. So the authentication on Slido is messed up. Hopefully I can get questions just posted. So case in point. So this is a problem we've had before. We thought we fixed it. And did we fix it? Who knows? Right? So we can get upset about it, or we can not get upset about it. The reality of the situation doesn't change. Will we be able to use Slido today to get questions? If we can, wonderful. If we can't, we'll do what we can, which is, oh, interesting, we have chat available. Right? There's so many good questions on Slido. Do y'all see what's upvoted and whatnot? Okay, here we go. Okay, what's the relationship between ego, outcomes, fractured awareness, unsatisfied grasping, and being done with something free from karma? Okay, so that is a question for next time. Because we're going to cover ego. Let's see, unsatisfied grasping, being done. Let me think about this. So we'll cover ego next time. I'm thinking about this. Okay, so the question is, what's the relationship between ego, outcomes, fractured awareness, unsatisfied grasping, and being done with something free from karma? There's too many variables there, so let's try to unpack it, all right? These are wonderful questions. Thank you so much, Tech Teller. And for those of y'all for posting them. So let's break these apart. First, let's start with the difference between the relationship between ego and fractured awareness. So ego results in fractured awareness 100% of the time. Not 99%, 100%. So remember that ego is the director's cut. It is an activity of the brain that is not focused on the task. So like this, we have like interesting neuroscience evidence, I would say, because some people dispute this thing that I'm about to share with y'all. So the first is that we have this part of our brain called the default mode network. The default mode network is probably where our sense of self comes from. So I kind of think about it as the neuroscience housing for the ahamkara or the ego. What we know is that hyperactivity of the default mode network leads to depression. The fastest acting treatment for depression is ketamine, which is a dissociative agent. So it shuts off the default mode network. You inject it into people's veins and their default mode network will shut off. So if we think about ego, see when you're let's just use the example of singing in the shower. Why do we sing so freely in the shower? Because no one is watching. And the moment that you realize that someone can hear you or is taping you or is watching or whatever, now the ego activates. And so your awareness becomes fractured. Now you're not just singing, you're thinking about how people will think about you singing. So ego and fractured awareness go hand in hand. And this is why we love unfractured awareness. This is why we play video games. Because when we're playing a video game or binge watching a show, we lose sight of our ego. No one is watching us. No one is judging us. And we don't have to worry about what happens next. So fractured awareness and ego go hand in hand. Now, what is the correlation between ego, fractured awareness, and outcomes? Bad. So we know that fractured awareness correlates with bad outcomes. This is what the flow state is. The flow state is a state of, generally speaking, unfractured awareness. There's still even deeper states of unfractured awareness, but so we know that flow state correlates with good outcomes and the attention is focused. What do we know about ego and and outcomes? Bad. Right? So narcissism in some ways can lead to some positive things in life, but generally speaking, people who are narcissistic are not happy and don't do very well. There's some situations like you can be a CEO and be successful in some ways, but even then you're going to go through like 3 divorces. I've seen it like literally a dozen times, literally. Worked with a dozen people like that. Same story. So now we see ego, outcomes, fractured awareness. It's all consistent, bad. Unsatisfied grasping, being done and being done with something free from karma. Now this gets tricky. So now we go back to mental karma, okay? So when I have a grasping and I fulfill it, I sow the seeds for future grasping. This is the first thing to understand. So unsatisfied grasping is the goal, right? So this is why people sort of advocate for desirelessness, asceticism, things like that. But it's not, you can't, this is what's really important to understand. You can't be like hardcore about it. You need to be relaxed about it. This is a big mistake that a lot of people make. They're like, no fucking desires, like never do anything good, like I'm going to hit myself in the nuts and I'm going to take cold showers and I'm going to eat unseasoned food and everything has to be as hard as possible. Doesn't work. Buddha tried it, didn't work, almost killed the guy. So what we need to focus on is not even engaging in the desire or not engaging in the desire. It is awareness that will lead to detachment. This is the important thing. So even if you engage, if you have a grasping and you engage in it with awareness, that is better than restricting yourself with lack of awareness. I'd say, okay, today I feel like this, I'm going to indulge in this. Let's see what happens. Do I give into this? Is it joyful? Is it not joyful? And as you do that, the desire will actually dissipate over time if you do it with enough awareness. Now, being done with something and free from karma is a couple of, let's talk about this. So that now we're getting cool. This is cool. This is advanced. So the first thing to understand is, see, when we engage with an action with awareness, and we don't, how can I say? Okay, so if I just indulge in a desire, this does not free me from karma. It does the opposite because it's unconscious. So we're activating the nucleus accumbens. We don't realize that I'm signing myself up for craving and tolerance. So I've gotten this cycle that ends to more and more action with less and less pleasure. This is tolerance. So as I give in to grasping, chances are I'm sowing more karma. Now, what about being done with something? How do we be karmically freed? Once again, it's about awareness. It's about what goes on the inside. So this is where, what example can I give? See, let's go back to the flowers. So if I'm giving someone some flowers because I like them, the way to be karmically free of that is to give the flowers and then not expect a result, right? This is done. This is complete. I'm finished. This is the action that I'm going to take. Wipe it away. The moment that I attach an expectation to it is a mental karma. Now I'm not done, right? So think about it from the perspective of literally thoughts. So I can give someone some flowers, and then I can say to myself, I'm glad I improved someone's life a small amount. I was hoping to see them again. Doesn't look like it's going to happen. So be it. Time to take my dog for a walk. Done. Now I can give them the flowers, and then we're not done if I attach things to it. So will they call me back? I left a note. Are they going to text me? Are they not going to text me? Why didn't they text me? Why are people like this? Why am I like this? All kinds of thoughts can come from the action. There's even another kind of incomplete karma or signing yourself up for karma. I gave them flowers. Look at how good of a person I am. You see how detached I am? I'm doing great. This person didn't respond to me. I'm so great because I'm not going to let it bother me. You can attach in that way. So if you pay attention, you will be able to perceive a finished karma. It'll feel settled to you and not again. So I was talking to an esports player who played a particular game for like 15 years, like on average 12 hours a day for like a decade. Maybe 15 years is a bit much, 10 years. This is what they did. And then when they retired, they have not played a single minute of the game since. I'm done with it. This phase of my life is over. Their karma is finished. They moved on. Very interesting. So the difference is in your perception, what you are able to detect. And the more that you are able to detect, the more you will be able to be done with karma. And remember, karma is about what you attach to it, right? So now everything comes together. So this is the other thing about advanced topics. It's not that we're going to get to like newer and newer stuff. What we're going to find is connections between everything, because all of it leads to truth or oneness or whatever the hell that is. These are all roads to enlightenment when we're talking about spirituality. So it's all going to connect. Okay. Are hopes and dreams also just attachments that we should abandon? No. There's so many problems with this question. So first is, are hopes and dreams also just attachments? Not necessarily. Okay? So attachments are, hopes and dreams could just be echoes in the mind. So these are not the same. I guess, I don't know if you mean dream like what happens in sleep, but like I have a dream, like things that you strive for. Yes, then that is an attachment. So it depends. It's not necessarily attachment, right? So you can have a goal and say, this is what I'm striving for. But there's a big difference. I want you all to just notice the tense. Striving for versus want to accomplish. One is in the present and one is in the future. It is perfectly normal and acceptable to have hopes and dreams, to strive for, but not to want to accomplish. To wake up today and say, this is what I'm shooting for, is a wonderful thing. To wake up one day and say, this is what I want to accomplish, is a trap. Right? So this is where present focus, action, and this is the beautiful thing about that. Even from an outcome perspective, it is good. Because when we try to accomplish something and it does not work out, we see that as failure. When we strive for something and it does not work out, we see it as a setback. See, it just depends on where you are. What's the next step forward versus missing your shot? One situation is GG, one situation is let's go again. The last thing that I don't like is should we abandon? Abandon has an emotional energy to it that I don't think is right. We should sublimate? Yes. Abandon? No. Look at the word. Abandon means to forsake something, to give up on something. That's not the attitude of detachment. Detachment is observation and sublimation, not abandonment. Big difference. May not feel like it, but there's a big difference. Can you become too detached? No. Well, maybe yes. So let's understand, too detached for what? What's your measure? So Buddha became too detached for a normal life. He literally up and left his wife and kid. That's a bad thing, right? Can you become too detached to be successful in the world by certain metrics? Probably. We have good historical stories about that. But practically, no. Because I think the beautiful thing is that as you become more detached, it doesn't matter. Right? So you're just moving on your journey. And then why do you attach yourself to a particular future that you're moving away from? Why do you value wife and kids over this kind of longing for joy and peace and contentment? So practically, I think the answer is, I don't know. It's like yes and no. Like too detached is also like that implies a value judgment. Is it possible that I'm dissociating instead of detaching without noticing? Possible, right? So I think this is where what we find with people who are dissociating is that they don't participate fully in life. They don't have the full range of experiences. Whereas someone who lives from a place of detachment actually has the full range of experiences. They have sadness, they have anger, they have fear, they have joy, they have curiosity, they have everything. And usually with dissociation, you don't have so much. Like some of it is walled off. So very practically what dissociation looks like, almost from a clinical perspective, is that you'll have an absence in one area and you'll have leaking out of emotions and weird manifestations in other areas. So you'll have someone who doesn't feel very angry but drinks a lot, which is just a way of managing your anger that you don't feel. So the very different pictures when you look at like it's going to be apples and oranges. Even though like a lot of the logic may seem like it ends up in the same place, it ends up at opposite ends of the spectrum. Isn't falling in love getting caught up? How do you fall in love while being detached? Great question. So, this is one that I think I haven't heard anyone else answer it like this. And I think maybe the reason is because a lot of people who were going to become monks either became monks and then started teaching about detachment, or did not become monks and usually don't teach about it. So this is where one of the things that I found, which is pretty interesting, right? So I learned to a certain degree to become detached from attachment. So even then, when I decided not to become a monk, it was like a beautiful moment. It was a moment of pure detachment. Maybe the only one in my life that I can think of. And I didn't realize that until I said this now, which is the karma of it, right? So, like, I had a moment where I was like, fuck it, let's go. Like, I can pursue this path of, like, spirituality and, like, become enlightened and all this kind of stuff. But you know what? Fuck it, let's go. I'm signing myself up for hurt. I'm signing myself up for disappointment. I'm literally changing the trajectory of my life for a girl. That is a terrible decision. Like, I'm changing my career path. I'm deciding to go to medical school because of a girl. Like, what? I'm signing myself up for 40 years of like 4 years of med school, 3 to 8 years, 7 years of training after that, like residency. And then I'm going to be like seeing patients because of a girl. Like, that's dumb, bro. And I was like, yes, it is. And we're going to do it. And it's the stupidest decision that I will ever make. But we're going to make it with eyes wide open, and I choose this. And it's been great. It's a stupid decision. And that's where falling in love is stupid. But this is what it means to live life with totality. It's not the avoidance of things, right? And I wouldn't have understood that if I did not do that. The reason that I did that is because it was my karma. That, once again, is tattvamasi. So she too is me. This is my life telling me, hey, go this path. And you just have to listen. So at the end of it, it's all the roads lead to Rome or home or whatever. It is getting caught up. But you can even get caught up with awareness. It's a beautiful thing. It's more enjoyable even. Right? Because then when things go wrong, then you have this part of you that's like, well, we knew things could go like that. Right? This is like, what did we expect? So that's, and then you feel that hurt when things go wrong. You feel that pain, and then you recognize this is my karma too. So then, like, then the interesting thing is, like, see, this is, I don't know if this makes sense. So, this is a beautiful question, because how do you fall in love while being detached? There's this assumption that falling in love and being detached are at opposite ends of the spectrum, right? Because we look at all these monks who are virgins, lol, betas, lol. And we think monks don't fall in love and monks are detached. We think that they're opposite ends of the spectrum, but there's no such thing. Detachment is the way you live your life, not what choices you make. Right? It is not actions. It is attachment to the actions. Very important to understand. You can do anything in life and be detached. That's what's so beautiful about it. That's why it is moksha. That is why it's enlightenment. Because you don't have, it's not, the whole fucking point is it is not bound to a particular thing. If it was bound to a particular thing, then the answer would be to get that thing. You control it, not the outside world. Do y'all understand this? Very important. You can absolutely be completely in love and completely detached. That's what we mean by totality of life. You live life fully. Let's go. Right? That's the attitude. 100% passion and 100% dispassion. Simultaneously. It's not this thing is right and this thing is wrong. It is the way in which you live it. Casino's the same. You can get caught up in it, or you can do it the smart way. Casino's the same. You can go become a monk and then carry all of your attachments with you. Why do you think it is that the minority of monks are enlightened? Did y'all ever think about that? Isn't it kind of weird? We have literally hundreds of thousands of monks. Very few of them become enlightened. Because it's not about being the monk. It's not about wearing the robes or sitting in an ashram. It is about your internal experience. What are some daily applicable actions you can do right now that will help you move into the direction of removing expectations? Great question. This is the last one we're going to handle today, okay? So, actions you can take now. The most important thing is to watch the expectation that comes from an action. Watch the birth of this thing. See, removing expectations is hard. So it's like, how do I remove a plant? Let's just think about this. How do I uproot a tree? Well, the best way to get rid of the tree is to prevent the planting. A seed is an easy thing to remove. A tree is a hard thing to remove. So the right way to do it is to start by observing the seeds that you're planting. So anytime you take an action, what are you hoping to get? When you showed up for stream today, what were you expecting? Just go on observing the expectation, observing the expectation, observing the expectation. And you notice that the more expectations you have, the more upset you're going to be. The second thing that you can do, so watch them as they start, right? So as you take actions, you'll notice there's an expectation, expectation, expectation. Second thing you can do is when you suffer, when was this born? And this is where a lot of people, I'll give you all a very, very important hint. A lot of people think that this was born from an action. It was not born from an action. It was born from an expectation. The consequence can be born from an action, but the suffering is not born from an action. The suffering is born from an expectation. I see this so much in the nice guys I work with. They think, oh, I did all of these things and this is why I'm unhappy. You're not unhappy because you did those things. If you stop and think about it, doing all of those things, being a beautifully supportive friend, what an amazing thing that you've done. You should take pride in that, right? I was there for this person when things were falling apart. I was there for this person when things weren't going well. I've been there with this person. We've shared all these wonderful experiences. But they're not happy. Why? These are all beautiful things that they're describing. It's because of the expectation, the attachment. So when you experience suffering, go back to where this expectation was born. And then see if I had changed my attitude towards this, what would my life be like today? Right? And I've seen this so many times with my patients where they like have some kind of challenge and they build up some kind of identity. And then the way to their happiness is not to reclaim the identity that they've lost. It is to let go of the whole complex. And then be who you are instead of trying to reclaim what you once were. You're a different person today. And the more that you live from where you are now, instead of trying to go back into the past and recreate those circumstances, the better off you're going to be. And I see this, like, I experience this shit all the time. So when I play a video game and I get dumpstered by a particular hero or champion, what do? I want to do that next time. I'm going to dumpster these shitties myself with this OP hero. But I suck with it. And sometimes it's RNG and sometimes people snowball. So I go into this game thinking I'm going to dumpster these shitties with these OP hero. This shit is the easiest shit in the world to play. Anyone can win with this. Oh my God, it's so frustrating that you can be so bad at this game and you can dumpster noobs. I'm going to do that too. And y'all tell me, chat, when you do that, what ends up happening? It's not that easy. And then you feel even more frustrated. And so one attachment leads to another attachment, an expectation. Y'all get it? Okay. Beautiful work today. As usual, we get to the best part with the Q&A. So we talked about this last time, but I still agree. I think we're seeing more data that the Q&A is the most important part. That's when everything really clicks. All right. So we'll see y'all. Weekly quest. Let's take a quick look. So the team over at HG has done an awesome job of putting together a quest. So someone was also asking, what's something that I can do in the next few minutes to deal with detachment? Go through these quests. Like, that's why we have them, right? So there's the information, which will just leak out of your brain over time. And then there's the application of the information. There's the manipulation of the information, which leads to understanding and growth. So dancing in the moment. Okay, I can't make an edit, but I'd say light quests, find a private space. Hard quest, not a private space. Okay, so this is a good introductory mindfulness practice. So I think this is something that is like Jnana Yoga oriented, right? So look at situations, look at your typical reaction. How can you, this is almost like a cognitive reframing. And then just notice. Shunya meditation, I debated these people into this. Y'all can do Shunya, it's great. And then, yeah, so I think this is a really good one. Right? So like look at your expectation that you have and then think about a detached perspective. Okay? Fantastic. And I know we gave a Tattvamasi, that's I called an audible, which sometimes happens. So that's not on there. Maybe it'll make it into there in some form next time around. Okay? All right, chat. Y'all take care. We will see y'all on, I think we have a regular viewer interview stream.